an independent analysis of European defense capabilities and strategic policy.
The silence over the Baltic Sea was broken on January 26, 2026, not merely by the roar of turbofans, but by the tectonic grinding of a new geopolitical reality. When Swedish JAS-39 Gripen fighters rose from their dispersed bases to intercept a Russian formation comprising two Su-35S Flanker E fighters and a Tu-22 M3 bomber near Gotland, the event signified far more than a routine policing of international airspace. This interaction serves as the first definitive stress test of Sweden as a fully integrated NATO member, acting as the primary gatekeeper of the Baltic approaches. For the defense observer, this offers a rare, real-world window into the collision of two divergent aerial warfare philosophies. The kinetic, mass-centric doctrine of the Russian aerospace forces versus the information-centric, distributed warfare doctrine of the Swedish Air Force. From an operational perspective, the composition of the Russian flight package suggests a deliberate calibration of force designed to provoke a specific electronic and tactical response. The Su-35S, currently the premier operational fighter in the Western Military District of Russia, brings a philosophy of brute force to the battle space. Its Urbis-E passive electronically scanned array radar is capable of tremendous power output, theoretically allowing it to detect targets at significant ranges. However, in the contest over the Baltic, this strength paradoxically becomes a liability. By emitting such high energy, the Su-35S effectively announces its presence, its position, and its intentions, long before it can attain a firing solution. This creates a tactical opening that the Swedish doctrine is specifically engineered to exploit. The Gripen, particularly the E variant, which operated in a support sensor role during this encounter, does not rely on matching the raw kinematic power of the flanker family. Instead, it leverages a superior electronic warfare suite and a philosophy of electronic stealth. The engagement highlights the critical value of the Meteor beyond visual range air-to-air missile, a weapon system that has fundamentally altered the calculus of engagement in the high north. Unlike the rocket-powered R-77-1 carried by the Russian flankers, the ramjet propulsion of the Meteor provides a throttleable engine, one that maintains high energy states during the terminal phase of flight. This means that a Swedish pilot can launch from a greater standoff distance with a higher probability of kill, negating the close-in maneuverability advantages that the Su-35S possesses thanks to its thrust vectoring engines. In practice, this forces Russian planners to reconsider the viability of their standard escort tactics, as the no-escape zone of Western ordnance now extends well beyond the comfortable engagement envelopes of the past. Furthermore, the incident underscores the successful validation of the Swedish Tactical Information Data Link system within a NATO context. While the integration of the standard Link 16 is a political and interoperability requirement for alliance membership, the indigenous Swedish data link remains a cornerstone of national tactical superiority. It allows the Gripen fleet to operate as a singular, distributed organism rather than a collection of individual platforms. One aircraft can remain entirely passive, sensors off, while receiving high-fidelity targeting data from a wingman or a GlobalEye airborne early warning and control asset operating hundreds of kilometers away. This silent shooter capability complicates the situational awareness of opposing pilots, who may find their radar warning receivers silent until the moment a missile seeker goes active. The operational data from January 26th indicates that Swedish pilots effectively utilized this asymmetry, maintaining situational dominance without engaging in the kind of aggressive maneuvering that characterizes Russian intercepts. However, a critical assessment of the Swedish defense posture must look beyond the successful technical execution of a single intercept. There is an inherent tension between the high-tech, boutique nature of the Swedish Air Force and the attrition-heavy reality of modern high-intensity conflict. The Swedish inventory, consisting of approximately 90 JAS 39C and D models, alongside a slowly growing fleet of E models, represents a formidable but numerically finite force. The Russian strategy often relies on the absorption of losses and the saturation of defenses. In a prolonged engagement scenario, the technical superiority of the Gripen and the lethality of the Meteor missile would eventually confront the brutal arithmetic of magazine depth and airframe availability. This raises significant questions regarding the sustainability of the current procurement strategy. The financial burden of operating two distinct variants of the Gripen simultaneously places a strain on the logic of the defense budget. While the European Union's safe funding mechanism has provided a necessary injection of capital, Sweden faces the challenge of scaling its ammunition stockpiles. The effectiveness of a sophisticated platform is rendered null if the stockpile of precision-guided munitions is exhausted within the first week of high-intensity combat. The reliance on just-in-time logistics, a hallmark of peacetime efficiency, appears increasingly perilous when viewed against the consumption rates observed in recent conflicts in Eastern Europe. Moreover, the strategic geography of Gotland transforms the nature of these intercepts. No longer a neutral buffer, the island is now functionally an unsinkable aircraft carrier, sitting astride the main Russian naval exit route from St. Petersburg. This geographic reality compresses the reaction time available to Swedish commanders. The Quick Reaction Alert launch on January 26th demonstrated adequate readiness, yet it also highlighted the lack of strategic depth. Unlike nations with vast hinterlands, Sweden fights from its bases on the periphery. This validates the continued relevance of the dispersed basing doctrine, where aircraft operate from road bases rather than centralized hubs. It suggests a tacit acknowledgement among planners that in a full-scale shooting war, the main air bases would likely be untenable within hours. And the industrial implications of this encounter are equally profound. The successful shadowing of the Su-35S serves as a potent marketing validation for Saab in an increasingly crowded export market. With nations like Thailand and the Philippines observing the performance of the Gripen against top-tier Russian hardware, this real-world data point is more valuable than any brochure. Yet, it also exposes the risks of supply chain dependency. The Gripen E relies heavily on British and American subsystems. In a scenario where global supply chains are contested, the ability of Sweden to maintain high sortie rates could be compromised by bottlenecks outside of Stockholm's control. Ultimately, the events of late January 2026 illustrate a shift in the Baltic security architecture. from a gray zone of ambiguous neutrality to a sharply defined line of contact. The Swedish defense establishment has proven it can technically and tactically overmatch the current generation of Russian threat aircraft through superior avionics and networked warfare. Yet, this tactical success masks a strategic vulnerability regarding scale and endurance. The trade-off being made is clear. Sweden has bet its national survival on the premise that superior information and technology can deter an adversary who prioritizes mass and resilience. While the Intercept over the Baltic was a victory for the former, it remains an open question whether the current force structure is sufficiently robust to endure if the Cold War turns hot. The challenge for Swedish strategists moving forward is not merely maintaining the technological edge, but finding a way to afford the quantity required to make that quality matter in a sustained conflict.